seated. Today we're just so happy to be able to have you all here for the grand opening of the Houston, Texas chapter of Apapa. Most great things, I would say all great things, start with an idea or a vision. So about a year ago, our next speaker came to Houston with a vision. She had a vision to serve our city by empowering the Asian community, to raise political awareness, to raise leaders, and to encourage the Asian community here in Houston to engage in the political process. So 1 year later, with a lot of hard work and grit and building relationships with our local and state political offices, I'm so happy to introduce Victoria Lee, who is the National President of Apapa and Chair of Apapa Austin. Victoria Lee.
I'm Victoria Lee. I am the Apapa National President. I'm just so excited and so honored to be here to participate in this grand opening of our Houston chapter. I don't know how to start. I'm just too excited. I'm so happy. And my husband always calls me like 1 in a million. And he doesn't really know if I am truly 1 in a million. Then in China, there will be 1,350 people just like me. And then people also do not realize that the top 25% of India, the Indian people in India, will be more than the whole population of the US. And then people probably don't realize that our high school students, our college students, whatever they learn right now, after they graduate, probably already out of date. Right now, we're training students, training our youngsters of the skills, technology, that they do not even know in the future what kind of job, technology they would need. So with all that in mind, how do we make sure that our community, our country will continue to thrive? How do we do that? I personally believe it's that diversity, creativity, leadership. Those kind of skills will help our community, our country to continue to thrive. How do we get there from here? And that's why I want to introduce our founder, Apapa founder, C.C. Yin. He's a legend.
Can you hear me here? Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. She drove 3 hours this morning. 6:20, 6:15 to 9:20 to be here. And our national executive director, who said this guy, stand up here, please. Guy and I flew in yesterday, and Victoria, as usual, in past many years, pick up us at the airport, take us to her home, because we want to build relationships and get to know each other better. And plus, we don't have money to stay at a hotel, and I can't pay the Uber, you know. But I was very happy also yesterday over. We see Liliana. Oh yeah, over the restaurant, the Vision New America team, Liliana and Nancy and Linda. Stand up, please. They come from California. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. You can hear, right? Okay. They are here to support you as part of the locals not here, but their works everywhere. With Apapa, before Apapa. Apapa was actually a child or son or daughter of Mission New America back when we started 17 years ago. They were there already 5 years, 23 years ago. Liliana was the one helped us build that in the Silicon Valley for the smart people, smart HSR. That's how we all follow those smart people and the wise people, Sandy Chao, Dr. Xun Kong, Professor White, White. Professor Bai's friends, white friends. Those are the people that we follow, we learn, and we inspire us to continue to bring the program to Silicon Valley to California, now last 6-7 years, to the rest of the country, especially Texas, where Alice, where are you? This pretty lady in the back. She's the one that my good friend for my lifetime. I was 70 years ago. We were friends in the Taipei Junior High School. That's how I recruit Alice. So Alice is the one recruit Victoria, and then they recruit everybody else here, the Nancy family, and another family here is the children here, Florence. Everybody's a family affair. You know, it was 40 years ago. I was in Houston, when I was an engineer. Working here, represent a company, come here, we designed things on the paper, didn't have computer by hand. So we made steel here in Houston. There's a small city next to Houston. They make the steels. Then after that, we ship that to the country, build the bridges, build the high-rise buildings from Houston. That's the first time I come to Houston 40 years ago as an engineer. Since then, I was inspired by the people at Sandy Chao Xingkong. They started the Civic Leadership Foundation. Chief Speaker, Civic Leadership Foundation, Executive Director from California. Anthony, stand up, Anthony, please. Yeah. Today's program will include Civic Leadership Foundation. This is all coming from the same people. Sandy Chao Xingkong and the Ken founded 3 doctors. Sandy has no doctoral degree, but he's brighter than doctors. So it's okay, I call him Dr. Chao. They're all doctors, by the way. Speaking of doctor, I have a good friend here, Mr. Mao, Professor Mao. He moved here 6 years ago. Yeah, he's from, started back in Sacramento 17 years ago. He was a professor at UC Davis. And where we started Apapa together, he was founding board member. So there's a lot of history going back. And plus that what we want to do is that we want to take the learning from California, from Silicon Valley to California, to the rest of the country. What is the rest of the country? Most Asians are here in three states, California, New York, and Texas. That covers the entire states. In between, there are few and many. Sheila. Is Sheila? No. Sarah. Okay. Anyway, so I want to thank you all for coming here. With many of you are the first generation, second generation. What we have learned in the past 17 years over the experiment started in Silicon Valley by those bright people was to, number one, you mentioned about it, that we need to continue to build America with Asian American people actively engaged in building community and the government. That's what we haven't done that much 150 years. We have so much talent and gift that especially 2 young generations, your age, not mine, your age and your children. That's what we think those 2 generations will become the mainstream of the government, the corporation and the community outside in technical and labor workers in the past like me. So that's our wishes. That's what inspired me as I grew up in America in last, how many years now? 55 years almost. Since I came here as a student. And later become an engineer, later become an entrepreneur with McDonald's, making hamburgers. And after that, last 17 years, I joined everybody else I mentioned here to help to build a better country by giving Asian Americans contribution to the community. Just like Steve Lee, this guy here, young man serving the city, we wanted to have those contributions so America can be more fair and more equal. And that takes America 280 years. Well, since the white man want to be equal, now the white women later become equal, the black become more equal, and the Hispanics now is a responsibility for Asians with the help of humanity. The African Americans, Hispanics, Caucasians, men, women, to help the Asians to come in to help to continue to build this country, like immigrants have come here before and after us. So that's the wish of the Vision New America started. That's the wish Civic Leadership Foundation wants to do, but it's almost the same people, which is you now. It's no longer us. We're a passing time. You are now, and your children is the future. So we really appreciate you come here, start this association. Now, okay, my time's up, but I just want to say a couple of things about it quickly before my time. Is that we provided programs. Basically, it's 4 programs, but mostly 2 programs. One is called Voters Pipeline. We built a voters pipeline from registration to education to actually going to vote. Vote smartly, you know what I'm saying? So you don't be fooled, basically. The second part we built a program is leaderships from high school, college to 20, 30, 40, 50. That's why the Mission America is helping us to build a program for high school, college, the so-called youth program, leaders, not just professional workers like I was, and like many of us been doing that in the past. But be a leader is very different than being a professional or small business like us. That Anthony represents the CF is to help your leaders of adults. Once you plan to go enter the service public, like Steve, those guys, that he's here, his programs help us nationally. We're 23 chapters now nationally, 7 states, and in California I have 13 chapters. This next year will be 15. The point is that it is local, community-based. It's not, we build a community, build local leaders, local voters. And the third is to serve the community where the special needs are. You decide that. It's very independent chapters that we support, we serve you. We don't control you, we serve you, we support you. So you are the boss, and the community is the base. And although each year we go to Washington, D.C., we go to California to do different things, but the key is really you. And whatever you build, whatever is yours, and we come to support you. So thank you all for coming, and we'll keep that relationship so we can build an entire United States with 50, 100 chapters, small or large. From that, we can start build services in the city, in the county, in the state, and nationally. California, we had, when we start that year, 2001, had 0 elected Asians in California state. Today, we have 20 elected officials in the California state after 17 years. It works. It works in one place. It's working in New York now, start up, and Texas is certainly the biggest, the best state. When Victoria drove us 3 hours I was half-time sleeping, half-time watching landscape. It was an endless land, so big. Last night, you guys, the steak, we want the steak, it's called the County Line Steakhouse. Your steak is 4 times bigger than we have in California. That size. Your cow is about 4 times bigger too. And believe me, everybody in what we thought of California is the world comes Texas. We look like a little small guy. So we really depend on you guys. You have so much resources and so much government support. We admire you guys. So please take from here. It is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CCE.
Thank you very much for having us here. I would like to start by calling Mr. CCE, founder and chair, Victoria Lee. I know Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee went away, but her representative Adma was here. I'd like to acknowledge a couple of other leaders that have, of course, Councilmember Stephen Lee is one of my look-up-to guys. A couple of other people who have taken the initiative of running for the future, Sarah D. Merchant, Melvin.
Thank you very much. So there's a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Merchant.
Can you hear me? Well, good morning. First of all, I want to thank you for everyone coming here today, and welcome to all our friends, especially our friends from other cities and states. And for someone who don't know me, my name is Jinjin Clements, or people call me JJ. And I'm an Asian representative of Pete Olson, our Congressman, District 22. And he cannot make it today, and he wanted me to bring the best regards to all of you. And I actually bring, I guess if you can hear, can you hear me? I can just, okay, great. Well, I'm going to read this recognition letter. I, the Honorable Pete Olson, Member of Congress, do hereby recognize the Asian Pacific Iceland American Pacific, wonderful, thank you very much. Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Association Houston chapter for its ongoing efforts to empower Asian Pacific Islander Americans with an emphasis on active participation in American public disclosure. APAPA has established voter registration drives, scholarships, internships, and a multitude of other activities essential to the development of informed citizens. The opening of the new Texas branch of APAPA signifies a new and exciting chapter for APAPA that will benefit Asian Pacific Islander throughout our great state. I wish you continued success in the years to come. It is an honor to serve you in Congress, Pete Olson, Member of Congress.
May I invite Glenn, Alice, and Anthony come up? We can accept this.
Yeah, well, we need to take some pictures as memory, great memory. Alice, please, and Vincent, and Congresswoman Sheila, come over and take a picture first before you speak. Come here. Please, we need to take a picture. Anthony, please, and Glenn, Alice, and Vincent, and Barbara. We need to take a picture first before everybody goes away. We need this picture, please. Please. So come here, please.
1, 2, 3.
Liliana, come up here. Come on, Liliana, she is the executive director for Vision America. That's all internship. Right here. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
One picture right here. 1, 2, 3.
Right here.
Thank you.
Alice, please.
Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee join us today. Please welcome Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee.
Well, that's all right. It's working with my voice. How about that? Delighted to be here with the Asian Pacific Islander and this great organization of American Public Affairs. Good morning, everyone. It is working. I think I might start singing. Council members, it's a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for your leadership in this city and what we all went through with Hurricane Harvey, are still going through, and the mighty work that the mayor and members of the city council, we saw you everywhere, and it was so vital to have you as a comforter, but also as a helper. So let's give the council member a very big hand as well. And what can I say about the founder, Mr. Yin, who this restoration, rejuvenation, new grand opening is all at both your feet, your intellect, and your spirit. Thank you so very much. There's something about a pioneer that you can never take from he or she. You are a young pioneer, but you are a great pioneer. Let's give him a very big hand. Madam President, National President, thank you so very much. Am I looking right? Where's the National President? Here she is, okay. Madam National President, it's a pleasure to be with you, and thank you for driving in, and I hope you're being enjoyed. I was making my good friend the National President. I thought I'd elevated her to National President, but she is the chapter president, and don't blame it on her. That's just me. Every time I see her, I thought I had elevated her to the national president, but you couldn't have a better chapter president, so give the chapter president and the national president a very big hand. Councilman Durrani, thank you so very much for your leadership. We are just friends all over. And you're going to hear from Nelvin, so I don't want to give his speech, but I will tell you that sometimes in my community, we have something called Testify. And as I was out and about during Hurricane Harvey, I can testify on all the work that Nelvin did. He can tell you when the people were at their lowest ebb. They were walking the streets, and I've seen this after Hurricane Katrina, and when many came to this town, people were just walking because they just didn't know what to do after Hurricane Harvey. Their apartments were gone, their homes were gone, and certainly I appreciate Nelvin. I look forward to knowing that you're going to do a grand job on this presentation. Thank you very much for what you do. Give him a hand, and all the presenters. These are the protocols they say have been established. Congressman Green, I'm delighted his representative's here. Congressman Olson, I think his representative was here. So let me tell you what I have been saying, and I am not going to give you Councilmember Lee's speech. But what I have said is that we who represent the broad spread of America must get into the civic space. The civic participation that this organization demands of us, collaboratively working across America's mosaic landscape of Anglos, Asians, and African Americans, and Hispanics, an array of faith. That is what America is. And every day in Washington, we're facing a challenge from those who do not understand that we too are America. Now, that does not mean that I leave out those who came on Pilgrim's Pride. There are historic traditions or legacies of all people. But they must understand, as I worked on behalf of Native Americans this week, that in fact, they came as immigrants. The early settlers, the founders of the 13 colonies, were immigrants fleeing religious persecution and political persecution. And I used to love that history, and I wasn't even in it, because we realized that my heritage was a different heritage. And so the trouble that I have as we work through this administration, and let me be very clear, I'm a Democrat who works with Republicans. I am an expansionist, meaning I want to include everybody, but I work with my Republican friends on amendments and homeland security, and we've done it all the time. Look at my record. I have one of the highest success records in passing amendments that change bills for the better on the floor of the House. I can only do that by working with Republicans. But at the same time, we undermine and diminish those who cannot speak for themselves if we don't speak out. So DACA impacts Asian young people as well. Why should we reject DACA? I wish we had comprehensive immigration reform. I introduced it and have introduced it every year since I've been in the United States Congress. As it relates to the Asian community, I worked to insist on your issues. What was it at the time? Family reunification. For the Filipino community, it was a ridiculous list that they're on for years. And the young people age out. By the time they get up, they can't even get under their parents because they've gone over the age. I know these issues. But here we have an administration, I'm not even going to call it a Republican or Democrat, because it's very difficult to classify what is going on in Washington right now. It is one that does not understand people. And that's the challenge that I have. That's why the civic space is important, because no matter what the party, you have to be heard. Let me say these 2 or 3 things why it is important, and then go to my seat as your program proceeds. So DACA, that is to be able to provide status to young people who are in college, medical school, the United States military, working. Does that seem to be a fair concept? Is that fair? That if you have been here, came here through no fault of your own, that you have ability to be statused. And then you have the issue of dealing with the Affordable Care Act. There may be some doctors in here. But the Affordable Care Act provided health care for millions of people. Millions of people. It helped the community health clinics right here in Houston. Some are out here in the Bel Air area. Community health clinics that we support. It's helped diversity in medical school training and nursing school training. It provided comfort and care for the elderly and as well for young families. It was joyful when I saw people enrolling in the Affordable Care Act. But we have an administration that wants to tear it up with no alternative, no options. That is not a compassionate government that George Bush spoke about, who I worked with, who I consider a friend. As President William Jefferson Clinton and President Barack Obama. No elected official is perfect, but the policies must be engaging in part of the people. Civic leadership is required. My leadership roles on the Budget Committee, on Homeland Security, on Judiciary, the lead member on the Criminal Justice Reform, it may not be one of you, but I can assure you someone that you know is touched by the criminal justice system. And unfairness is not what you want. A sentence of 50 years for a small offense because of mandatory minimums is not what you want. Civil rights should be for everyone. No one should be discriminated against, and people are discriminated against in the workplace. And my final 2 points. Last night at about 1:45 a.m., Mr. Yin, a vote came on a tax bill. That is not civic, transparent leadership. If you woke up to the news this morning, you saw the bill had scribblings on the side. I would venture that any businessman would be a little bit concerned about scribblings and then sign it and didn't read the scribblings on the contract that they're signing, or businesswoman. If you wrote the scribblings and it said, give them all the money, you might sign it. But this is a tax bill. That most of the money will not go to folk making $75,000, many of your constituents. That's a good money. But they won't get any tax break. They'll get an increase. Your students won't be able to take the student deduction anymore. You won't be able to take your medical expenses catastrophic anymore. Your business pass-through will be temporary for small businesses. Your tax relief will be temporary. And I always believe that I am my brothers and sisters' keeper. I have to worry about someone else. That's the tax bill. But the main thing is that I met with the generals yesterday morning. It's a classified briefing, so I can't give the details. But what I can say, because I believe in a prepared military, that the $1.4 trillion deficit, does anybody operate? Could you work with the city, my friend, with a $1.4 trillion deficit? I hear you all the time. I kind of peek in on you sometimes from Washington. That would stop us from having full complement of Medicare and Medicaid because of that deficit. That's what this tax bill will do. So as I close, my last point is the thing that really hurts me. I really do believe that we're all part of the human family. That if I dislike you, it's because of your actions, not because of where you came from. And the tone that has been set by the Commander-in-Chief, from Charlottesville to football players and any array of reactions to how you deal with international enemies and friends, requires your participation in the civic process. You must not agree with Sheila Jackson Lee, but you must indicate what is a decent way to deal with your community. And it must be your voice that says it. And that will make America the great country that she is. I don't think we have to make America great. You are here, and you are making America great. And this organization, I'm so excited of the grand opening and the restoration and rejuvenation, because I want to call you friend. I hope you will view me as a friend and a representative that you can count on. Please don't hesitate to advocate for issues, to tell me what your position is, and to ensure that we are accountable for the work that you want. I leave you simply with the fact, as I started out, we too are in America. And when we pledge to the flag of the United States, I can assure you that that pledge is not frowned upon because we look differently and are different. In fact, it is energized. And as I travel the world, the admirers of America are because we reflect the diversity of greatness. God bless all of you. Congratulations to the rejuvenation and the grand opening of the Asian Pacific Islander American Public Affairs Houston chapter. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee. We will follow your leadership and mentorship. We want to be as powerful as you to make voice. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have the leadership join as I present this resolution? And would you come, the President, Council Member, and all board members, Nelvin, Mr. Durrani, you can come up. Come on, please. We're all working together. Yes, you call the name.
Hey, you guys do. Alice, everybody else, Liliana, please, Barbara, and Anthony, please. Those long-time leaders working locally and nationally. Thank you.
I chair the package, and I just feel at home here. So I know that we will continue to work together.
But one thing you don't know is you look like you're younger than my life member in WCP. My life member, 1084.
He understood, and remember,
1084 was in Oakland.
Wow.
It was 40 years ago. before you were born.
I know Oakland, so I know he was supporting. But remember, the NAACP is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And it's white is a color too now. So they are part of NAACP too.
Yeah.
I received an award of your NAACP convention back 25 years ago in Oakland.
Wow.
And I'm a good friend of Barbara Lee.
And Barbara Lee is like my sister.
Yes.
Remember Lee, Barbara Lee, Sheila Jackson Lee?
I know.
I'll tell her that I saw you. I really will.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you again.
There's a young woman over there. My name is Sheila Jackson Lee. Okay.
America. Thank you. And now I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Steve Lee, Houston City Council member.
Thank you, Florence. Thank you, Nancy, Victoria Lee, Mr. CCN, Congresswoman Shirley Jackson Lee. And she's right that during Hurricane Harvey flood, she was there with us. And she does work across the aisle. I can attest to that because on the day that she came to testify in front of City Council, she actually wore red. So thank you very much for coming today. J.J. Clemens, Mr. A.J. Durrani, Nelvin, Sarah, distinguished guests, thank you very much for having me here. And let me tell you a little story about Texas. I heard CCN talking about driving here from Austin and noticing the landscape and the size of Texas. So a few years ago, I had a friend from New York, and you know New Yorkers, they're very proud of their city, very proud of their state. They think that they're the center of culture for the U.S. So he came to Houston and landed down to Intercontinental Airport. And he made a comment, wow, this is a really big airport. So I told him, yeah, everything in Texas is big. So we got into the car, and I drive an Infiniti QX, and it's one of the bigger SUV. And he said, man, you guys should drive big cars here. I said, yeah, in Texas, everything is big. So I drove him to the hotel, and he got to the hotel, and I said, I'll come to dinner with you, and then we'll see you tomorrow. So he got to the hotel, walked in, looked in the lobby. He said, wow, it's a really big lobby. I go, yeah, in Texas, everything's big. So he checked in, he called me from his room, he's like, Steve, I got to my room, and you can't imagine the bed, the size of the bed, it's huge. And I said, yes, everything in Texas is big. So I joined him for dinner, came and ordered steak, brought out the Roadhouse steak, 52 ounce. And he said, man, this is big. I said, yes, in Texas, everything is big. So he drank a little bit too many margaritas. On his way back to his room, he went into the wrong room, fell into the swimming pool, and yelled, don't flush, don't flush. Because he thought he fell into the restroom. Of course, this is just a joke at the end, but nonetheless, that's the size of Texas. We were very proud of our city and very proud of our state. What we're proud of more is the diversity in our city. When you look at a city of Houston where the makeup is equivalent to actually all of the different continents around the world, you realize how diverse the city of Houston is. And it's not the homogeneous of a city that defines the strength of its people, but it's actually the diversity of the city that strengthens the people. And we've seen that over and over again in Houston. From 2012 until now, every single day, Houston received 1,000 new Houstonians. Imagine that. I spoke to Lillian earlier, and she commented how many of the Vietnamese from San Jose are moving to Houston. Why not? We're a great place to be. Plenty of land, plenty of opportunity, and we're big. That's the kind of atmosphere and environment that you have here in Houston. I'm very appreciative of Apapa because I know over the past 16 years, Apapa has engaged Asians and recognized that we're not as active in politics as we should be. And I'm appreciative that Apapa sent me a stellar intern over the summer. You know, if you look around, Asians in general are very successful academically. We have lots and lots of professors at elite universities. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have engineers, we have millionaires and billionaires, businessmen. But politicians, not so much. You know, when Asians in general are very conservative thinking. We tend to push our children into fields and professions that are considered safe. I remember years ago when my youngest brother approached my parents and said, I want to be an English major. You know, I saw the bewildered look on their face, like, say what? What are you gonna do after that, is what they said. Expecting to say law school, maybe even medical school. I've seen English major in medical school, so yeah, maybe medical school, MBA maybe, PhD in English to be a professor, possibly. But what he said was, I want to be a writer. Guess what he is now? He's a civil engineer. Because that's the way we think. That's the reason why you don't see many Asians as actors, actresses. You don't see them playing professional sports. Because we push our children into something that we consider safe, something that we know our children can achieve. And then also, we view most politicians, as corrupt. And we don't value the politics around us. You know, politicians are like the Spider-Man of comic book heroes. And let me tell you why. So you got Superman, he's saving the world, and everybody loves him. You know, whenever they see Superman, oh, you know, you got confetti falling down, oh, Superman is here, it's great. You have all the other superheroes, and everybody loves him. But Spider-Man, he has to work at night. He's fighting crime, but every time he sees somebody, they're yelling at him. They're blaming him for something. And that's what politicians are. Politicians, most of them, try their best to help society and community, but always seems to go on the negative side because of the few rotten apples that spoils for the bunch. You know, it's also very hard for politicians to serve everybody. You can't keep everybody happy. And just keeping the few people around you happy is a full-time job. I know, like Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, going to Congress is a full-time job, but for us council member, this is not a full-time job. So we have to keep our daytime job. You know, for me as a physician, a family doctor, every time I walk into a room, everybody in that room loves me. They adored me. They adored me so much, they love me so much that I feel extra, extra special. But as a politician, when I walk into the room, have them like, not love, have them like me. And the other half are waiting to beat me up. That's a politician. So why do we do it? You know, as a council member, my single vote changes the lives of the people around me. In the city of Houston, there are only 16 council members, 11 district members, and 15 at large. We determine your property tax rate, we determine your electric rate, we determine your water rate, we determine your potholes, we determine your crime rates by allocating enough money to the police or not. We determine your safety through the fire and EMS department. We even determine your trash pickup days and how much trash gets picked up. In this district alone, I'm responsible for over 220,000 lives. By my single vote, by my single voice, through the people who elected me to represent them, I determine how their traffic flows each morning. I determine whether there's going to be new street panels, whether that neighborhood is going to have speed bumps. Politics is very real and very local. It affects us tremendously. Yet a lot of times, as Asians, we feel that it is so far away that we're more concentrated on our education, our children's success, our jobs, our career. But in reality is, and as most of you businessmen and women know, making money and keeping money are two different things, but just as important. I can make a lot of money, but if I pay a lot of taxes, I won't have a lot left over. It's just as simple as that. So I like to make a lot of money. I like to pay as little tax as possible and keep the rest of the money. Because I guarantee you, I know how to spend my money better than you know how to spend my money. Right? But if you allow me to spend your money, by all means, stay for everybody. Tax size. You know, over the past year, and this is very dear to my heart, because some of you who are from out of town haven't seen the devastation that Hurricane Harvey and the flood that has done to Houston. But of the 11 districts that are in Houston, did you know that District F, that's my district right here, is the only district in the entire city that was least affected? All the district has those big trucks that went through to pick up debris and trash, except for District F. That wasn't by accident. That was actually through a lot of work and planning. And it was actually, when I first came into office, it was actually because I got beat up that we did that planning. So last year, when I got into office in January 2016, within 3 months from that, we had the Tax Day flood. Tax Day flood devastated lots and lots of homes in Houston. A lot of my constituents called me and said, what are you guys doing up in the city? Why is drainage still an issue? Why are we still getting flooded? So I went out to each of the homes and looked for myself to see what's going on. And some of these homes live right off the bayou. And I couldn't understand, if you're right off the bayou, why are you flooding? So we went and looked at the bayou. And what we found was a lot of debris, a lot of used tires, a lot of trees that have grown up over the years inside the bayou, and nobody cleaned it out. I mean, we're talking about big trees. So obviously, things have slipped through the crack. So from May of last year, and we completed May of this year, we removed 600 trees from the bayou and 60,000 pounds of debris and tires from our bayou in District F. And because of that, even though we had the flood, we were able to drain, get the water out. So therefore, the homes that were affected the most in District F flooded just 6 inches. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the opportunity that a politician has. That's how we can help our neighbors. Not only ourselves, but our neighbors. I grew up in Houston. I came here when I was almost 8 years old. I love Houston so much, I stayed. Went medical school elsewhere, did graduate work elsewhere, but always kept my Houston driver license because I knew one day I'll be back in my city because this is where my home is. And ever since then, I've always wanted to give back to my community. I want to be able to do something for my neighbors, protect this city and allow it to grow and offer the same opportunity that I had as a child to my children. You know, our future, a while ago with the orchestra here to sing the national anthem, that's our future. For me, I know age is relative because Mr. C.C. Yin called me young earlier. My children say, no, Dad, you're very, very old. So I'm glad that he called me young, and I appreciate that. You know, it's all relative. But age-wise, at my age, the only thing I can do now is give back. Because I'm almost past the half point. Actually, I'm past that half point. You know, years goes by quickly, but I'm past the half point of my life where to do something new is going to be a lot more difficult than to continue what I've been doing. So what does this mean? What does this mean to all of us? It means that we need to be engaged and we need to participate. Where do you start? Start by voting. In Houston, we have over 65,000 registered Asian voters. In District F alone, we had over 10,000 registered Asian voters. You know, in the 2015 campaign when I ran for office, and that's when Mary Turner also ran for office, and many of us on council also ran for office, the total participation was 260,000 votes. 260,000 votes to get the mayor in the office. The Asian community holds 65,000 of that vote. Do you realize that had we voted as a bloc and had our voice heard, we could have commanded 29% of the total vote? That's powerful. You're able to dictate who gets in and be mayor, who gets to help you, who gets to speak up for you. That's very, very powerful. But you know the participation rate in Houston? 10%. 10% of the Asian came out to vote. Now, during the campaign time, I got onto TV in the Chinese community and the Vietnamese community, and I rallied the vote. I made sure people came out and voted for their candidate. And because of that, we were able to achieve a 15% participation rate, but nowhere near the success that Apapa city has done. Lillian tells me that it's more than the national rate, meaning that it's got to be more than 20% participation rate. So as we see everywhere that Apapa has a chapter, they're able to engage the community, get people involved, get the votes out. And that's what we need, because collectively, Asian has a strong voice. And actually, Asian community is the fastest growing community in the US right now. Our participation in local and national and state level politics is very, very important. Not only for us to be heard, but for our services to our community. As you know, most Asians are immigrant like myself. Now, I'm fortunate that my parents were able to sacrifice, work 5 jobs between the two of them to make sure that we had food, that we had clothing, that we had a roof overhead, and push me toward education. So I'm very fortunate that I'm a family physician and I'm not struggling. But not everybody's as fortunate as me. That's why it's so important to me to be their voice, because I've been there. I've been poor. I've been in a position where I don't know if we're gonna still have a roof over our head because of unemployment, because of the economy. So I always push my children and every one of their friends to get out there and participate. And actually, during my campaign, a majority of my children's friends actually went out on a block walk for me. So I'm very, very happy. You know, the other participation that we see more Asian are engaged in is school boards. And Sung recently won her re-election. We have John Nguyen now in the A-Leaf ISD. We have Lily Trung in the A-Leaf ISD. You know, Nelvin is thinking about running for council, Houston, City of Houston Council next year. You know, so we have a lot of fresh faces, new ideas, participation. Thank you for that. Running a campaign is not easy. It takes a lot of work, a lot of leather to the floor, to the ground. But you don't have to start that way. You can volunteer at your local church, your local temple, your local homeowner association, civic clubs. You can work your way up. Why is it important? Because participation is important. I know that all of you here understand that. Now raise your hand, how many of you are introverts? Okay, well that's supposed to be a trick question because introverts don't usually participate. So you're not introverts. Now I know most of you are probably extroverts. That's why you're here. Because the introvert tend to sit in the back, tend to be shy and quiet, keep to themselves. But do you know that research actually show that introvert and extroverts both can be leaders equally effective? That's a proven fact. Now the team obviously is comprised differently, but nonetheless, the leadership is effective. Now a lot of us Asians tend to be introverts. We tend to be a little shy. We don't speak up as much. But how many Asian leaders do you anticipate that we may have? I anticipate a lot, because I know every time I look at our young people, I see bright eyes, I see bright minds, I see people full of energy. Gosh, sometimes I wish I had that kind of energy. I wake up in the morning and my back is aching, my hip is aching. Anthony said, join the club. Brother, I'm already there. I've been part of the club. I'm just hoping I won't be the spokesperson. You know, it's an old proverb. It's an Asian proverb that I like to read. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of success. It means every time you fail to get elected, fail at what you do, you need to rise up and do it again. You need to keep pushing yourself. You know, when I was in junior high, a 7th grader, in math class, I used to daydream a lot. And I would always get into trouble because my teacher would call on me and I would have to ask her to repeat the question. I knew the material because which Asian don't know math? Come on, right? So I knew the material. However, I was just daydreaming a lot. So they'll call my parents in and my parents would then sit down and talk to me and say, son, you need to daydream on your own time. But the lesson that I'll never forget from them is they say, son, don't ever stop daydreaming. Don't ever stop dreaming. Because, you know, I want to quote them. They say, your dream will one day become your vision. You know, at the time, my dream was to be a superstar, a math whiz. But because of all the daydreaming that I had in math class, I decided that no, maybe I should be a doctor instead of a math whiz. Because I got to calculus 2 and I was done. But I never stopped dreaming. I never stopped dreaming how I can contribute to my community and my society, how I'm able to give back. I never stopped dreaming the American dream and realizing the American dream. I never stopped believing in myself. And now I'm instilling the same into my children. I want them to continue to dream, continue to have a vision, because their dream will one day become their vision. So thank you very much for having me here. You guys have a blessed day, and congratulations in grand opening of, congratulations in the grand opening of Apapa Houston chapter. Congratulations Nancy and Victoria. Thank you very much for coming in from Austin. I appreciate you guys, and anytime you need something from our council office, please give me a call. Please send me some more interns, I love them. Not only they came and contributed greatly to our office, but they were free for us. So I really like that part. Again, thank you very much and have a blessed Saturday.
My name is Chao-Tsu. I'm the president of Houston 8020. Now, I do not have such a good speech as Stephen Lee here. So I'm going to try to talk about what I can. So it's very encouraging to see our Asian community progress so much. I remember when I was in high school, we simply did not see any involvement in politics. I remember as a 16-year-old, we had Congressman Chris Bell running for office, and I went and volunteered on his campaign. And I was about the only, I guess, Asian kid that I knew that was taking any interest in this. And it was very difficult, and talking to people within our community, everybody, especially I guess the first generation migrants here, my dad, his friends, uncles, everybody was against this idea because they grew up in a society where you're just quiet. You don't ruffle feathers. You don't involve in politics, right? But obviously, growing up here, we see different opportunities, and in the late 90s, early 2000s is when I heavily got involved. And from then until now, the change that we see, the progress that we see in our community is very encouraging, especially for me now, and coming of age, and I've got little kids. So when I see my kids, I see hope. I see that they have a bright path ahead of them. Houston 8020 was formed in the late 90s. We are a nonpartisan PAC. We are the largest Pan-Asian American PAC here in the area. We do a lot of different activities, but we have two signature activities that we do here in the Houston area. One of them, every 4th of July, you will see us planting flags here in the Chinatown area, here on Bel Air. So, and everybody sees that it's a good event. We get the whole community out. And it has become our signature activity. The other thing that we do that we have been very successful at is we endorse candidates before the elections. So it's a nonpartisan PAC. We have our endorsement committee, will have Democrats, Republicans, and Independents on it. And anybody to win our endorsement needs to be endorsed by a supermajority of our endorsement committee. And it's a very rigorous process. it's not rubber stamping. We don't just give our endorsements away, because once we get the endorsements out, once we endorse people, that's when we work hard to get them elected as well. And we have a very good track record. Last time, out of the 10 candidates that we endorsed, 8 of them got elected, which is a very good number for us. So, and then now what we're trying to do is I'm glad Apapa is here now. We can work with y'all, and get to the next level. It's very encouraging whenever I see more people from our community, more Asians getting involved, because that's when our power is increasing. That's when we can do a lot more. Now, going into the next year, obviously we'll work with Apapa. We have just involved, so we just started endorsing in the city, the school board elections as well. Initially, we started out with the city congressional races, and now we're doing the school board elections as well. And we endorsed Ann Sun. She won. Thank you. But now, going into the next year, we have the spring elections coming up, so we're going to involve ourselves in that as well. I would encourage everyone to involve yourself with Apapa. This is a very great organization. Thank you so much, Nancy, for opening this chapter. CCN, thank you. And I believe Stephen is going to come up after me and we'll talk about more.
And I talk about what to speak here today. We decided to divide up. I think Sanaa Kudin is going to talk about the future. My job is to talk about the past. I came to Houston in 1994. So for many years, even though I may be older than some people in the room I was in, but they've been in Houston much longer than I did. Finally getting to the point, I look at this room now, I think I may have been here long enough to talk about the past. One reason I think I'm the right person to talk about the past of civil engagement in Houston was exactly I arrived here in 1994. 1994 was a major milestone in the history of Houston civil engagement and the political empowerment. That was the year Martha Wong was elected into the city council. Martha has a long history to be the first in the Asian American community in Houston. Before he got elected into the city council as the first Asian American in the Houston City Council, he was many firsts already, including the first school principal in the state of Texas. And all you know, later, she was also elected into the Texas state representative as the first Asian American woman. But here, I look around, I want to ask, how many of you know what is Martha's middle name, maiden name? Martha's middle name is G. It's not G-E-E, it's J-E-E, but doesn't matter, that's all the same. Before I came to Houston, I learned from my old friend, Paul Chu, my colleague at University of Houston. In Houston, there's something called G Family Association. So before I came to Houston, I learned how important was G Family Association. Okay? The reason was that, for example, you heard about Committee 100. At that time, Texas only had 3 members on the Committee of 100, all from the G Family Association. Okay, let's talk about Martha. Martha was not the first G family engaged as a civil servant. Okay? I want to borrow the podium here because talk about history, I don't want to cite the numbers wrong. And my memory is not that good anymore. In 1963, Henry G. was appointed to be the Assistant Attorney General of the state of Texas. Okay, Henry G., as you know, I think he served for many boards at the different universities in Houston, as well as I think he was the president of the National Assistant Pacific American Bar Association back in 1990. And he was not the only one. The other one is, many of you know, Robert G. Actually, he was first appointed to be the Texas, actually he chaired the Texas Public Utility Commission back in the 1991. And later in 1997, he was appointed to be the Assistant Secretary of Energy. These are the two of the three Gs served on the Committee of 100. Who's the third one? Paul Chu. G in Chinese is Zhu. So all three are from the G Family Association. And Paul told me a story before I moved to Houston. He said, once he became famous, he was summoned to the G Family Association. In Chinese wording, that's called 认祖归宗. So the question is, where are the Asians in Houston came from? If you trace back the history, in 1870, there were 250 construction workers came to Houston to work. 10 years later, in the 1880 census, there were only 7 left, and they may not be from that 250. So they were all gone after the project was done. The real move to Houston came in the 1930s. After the Depression, the Great Migration, many African Americans from the South, they moved to California. So many Asians in the southern states at that time, they were store owners. Their customers were gone. That's one reason. The other reason they left Mississippi, they left Arkansas to come to Houston was at that time, the school system was segregated. Their children had to go to black school. That was the year, that was the time Martha Wang's family moved from Mississippi to Houston. Martha, after their family moved to Houston, Martha was born here. They moved to Heights here. At that time, nobody would sell them a home, a house, or an apartment. So basically what they have to do, they rent a grocery store. They live in the storeroom behind the store. That's how the Asian in Houston started. And that was only 80 years ago. And if you talk about other people, I think there are so many G's family. There were several G members passed away in the past 5 years. I just want to mention 2 of them. One of them is George G. I think many of you, if you walk around at that time, when he was still around at that time in good health, in the Chinese Community Center, he was known as Uncle George. He was well known to be the person give away the red envelope to everybody he ran into. What's inside the red envelope? A laminated $1 million bill. His family moved to Texas, moved to Houston in 1939. And then, when he was 26 years old, his father died. He took over the G&G store. Of course, you know what the G stands for. And he started running the grocery store from 26 years old and put his brothers and sisters through college. And that's what happened at that time. These people moved from the southern states to Texas. By 1950, there was still less than 1,000 Chinese Americans in Houston at that time. 1950 was the other wave. That's the other person got written up in the Houston Chronicle. I think both George G. and Terry G. got a very nice article written for them, published on the Houston Chronicle. That was Terry G. Terry G. was the mover behind the first assisted living senior housing in the Chinatown area. He was the force behind the Senior Citizen Association. He left China in 1949. He moved to Houston in 1951. So he was the beginning of another wave of new immigrants and also students to come to Houston. And also at that time, many things happened. The Anyang Kongsanghui, the Chinese Merchant Association, was established in the old Chinatown here in the early 1950s. That area now is pretty much run down. And by 1983, this area started to develop. Then the stores start to move to this here area. That's now we call the New Chinatown. By 1983, we have about 30,000 people here now. And what happened? Just like Terry Chu, just after World War II, after 1949, the immigrants from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, from Southeast Asia came here, including students like Paul Chu. So that's why I said, if you talk about the history of Houston, the Chinese American in particular, you cannot get around without talking about the G family. All the examples I talk about are the G families. But at that time, a new wave started. This is no longer the grocery store owners. Their children went to college, and also the new immigrants with students, they graduate and stay. 1950, the Chinese Professional Club was formed. So it's no longer just socially, but also professionally. They got organized. Until 1979, the OCA Greater Houston chapter was formed. And the same year, the Chinese Community Center is formed, started as a Chinese language school. So step by step, we grow and we become mature. Chinese Community Center around here, as you know, is the most recognized community center around here. But it's not the only one. 8 years later, the TICO office, the Taipei Economical and the Culture Office set up the Chinese Culture Center. It is the largest culture center by TICO in terms of area in the whole world. Then, 5 years later, we have the Taiwanese Community Center, and finally, we have the Chinese Civic Center. So we are very unique. We have 4 very active community centers representing different portions of the Chinese American community. So I'm biased because I make it very clear in my title, I'm talking about personal perspective. So I'm just talking about the things I know I got involved more directly. I think during the master's leadership, I think a lot of things happened. I think that was really the beginning of the changes. At that time, during the 8-year tenure, there were many Asians were appointed to the city government as well as metro. There was not too many of them, if any, before Massa was elected in 1984. In 1999, we also have the first police assistant chief with a Chinese American heritage. That become the tradition in Houston. In the past 18 years, we have 4 assistant police chiefs, one by one. When one retired, we push the mayor, we push the city council, appoint another Chinese American assistant police chief. We still have one at the top of the Houston police office. When Massa was turned in 1999, we know we need to find somebody to take over his position. That was the year we recruited Gordon Kwong. Okay? And that was also the year we got the first Vietnamese candidate to run for the city council. That was 1999. So in April, there was the first visit of S.B. Wu to Houston. He came here to campaign for Gordon, and we host a breakfast meeting with Gordon, with S.B. Wu. That was the first time we heard about 80-20. Porcher was there, Gordon Kwong was there, Rojin G. Calvert was there. Rojin later became the chief of staff for Gordon. And also we have professional engineers came at that time, Jenny Young. So later, Rojin, Jenny, and I started the 80-20. So right after Gordon was elected, 1 week later we get together, we said what we're going to do. That was the end of the winter of 1999. We said we need to do something to support 80-20 at that time. So we decided to launch a campaign. We called that 10,000 signatures for the new millennium. In Chinese, 10亿人万人签名运动. People say you are crazy, 10,000 signatures. We thought about it, we brainstormed, we said that's doable. What we have to do is to recruit 100 ambassadors. Each one of them collect 100 signatures. That's 10,000 right there. We did it in 2 months. 2 months later, in mid-February, we go to George Teresa Chen. He has a good connection to the top of the Bush campaign. We sent 700 pages all the way to Austin. In March, we got 2 letters back from Bush. Okay. That was a long history, but I think, let me go to the highlight. We make our mark really in 2001 when Orlando Sanchez and D.P. Brown ran for the mayor. We invited him to come to a candidate debate. Orlando Sanchez did not even show up, did not even have a decency to send a representative. We put all our weight behind D.P. Brown at that time. So at the election night, we were at the Brown Convention Center. And Brown invited us to there. When he won the election by 1.4%, he invited Gordon Kwong to the podium and acknowledged Asian Americans win that election. As the result, Gordon Kwong was appointed the mayor pro tem that year. Later, we have the University of Houston has a professor who specializes in survey. In one of the essay interview, he did an essay interview, and he found for that particular election, the African American vote roughly 50-50. Hispanic American vote also about 50-50. For that election, Asian American vote 70-30. And finally, the big hit was the year 2004 when Hubert Vogt ran for the state representative. He was running against a 22 years incumbent, the chair of the appropriation committee. Hubert Vogt was just a boat people. He came to Houston, he went to University of Houston, got a bachelor's degree, has no track record, versus a 22 years incumbent. He won the election by 33 votes. That was less than 0.1%. So we went to Austin to recount. We made many trips to Austin at that time. I think AJ remembers that. That was the time we set another shockwave through the community. After that, the rest is history. I think after that, I think MJ come, win the city council, and now we have Steve here. But I think you're looking from Martha Wong to Steve, you also see the trend. Martha was born in Houston, right? Gordon came very young. Then MJ came from Pakistan to US to go to University of Illinois. Then Steve, I think you came after the Saigon was, after the fall of Saigon. And you also look at history, it's interesting. When Martha ran at that time, she was running in an all primarily white district, District C. Gordon won a large position, but now MJ and Steve, I think we have the District F right here. This is the District F area. On the state level, I think after Martha retired, we have Gilbert Vogt, we have Jim Green. In the last century, we had nobody from Houston, from the Asian American community here at the state representative. Right now, in this century, we got 3, and right now we still have 2 in Austin. We came a long way. So, but coming back to Houston 80-20, I think actually we have 4 board members as speaker here today. Okay, Salahuddin is the only one representing Houston 80-20. The other 3, we also represent other organizations. But I think that's important to see the distribution. We have 2 East Asian here and 2 South Asian. That pretty much reflects the composition of our board today. That's been the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pai, for reminding us of where we have been. Now I would like to introduce from the Judge of County Court at Law 3, Ms. Jennifer Chang.
Can everybody hear me, or do I need to use the microphone? Okay, I will use the microphone. Hi everybody, my name is Jennifer Chang. I am a candidate running for Fort Bend County Court at Law number 3. I am a sitting judge in Sugar Land and an attorney that's in general practice. And I was tasked to talk to you about how to get involved in your community, perhaps to set yourself up to be elected later on in the future. So a little bit about myself and my story. My family has been in the United States since the late 1800s. We were the railroad people. So my mother's family, the Yee family, has been in the United States, but specifically Texas, for now 6 generations. So we are, I joke, my husband is Anglo. But I always joke that when we start comparing genealogies of how long ago has your family been in the United States, compared to a lot of Caucasians, my family actually has been in the United States longer than their families. Therefore, I am more American than they are. And that's just a fact. That is just a fact. But I also have the good fortune of coming from a long line of family member. Dr. Stephen Pai knows my grandfather very well, Louis Yee, my mother Sue Chang, and they taught me to really value public service, to be involved in your community, to help out those who can't speak for themselves. So my grandfather was a community organizer, a former leader of CACA, OCA, the Yi Family Association. My mother was another community leader. She used to be the president of the Texas Asian Republican Caucus, and I was also a community leader because that's all I knew, was that you were supposed to be involved in the community, to want to make things better, and you were empowered to do that. Remember, in the United States, each individual is empowered to help their fellow man, to see what's going on with their neighbors and speak out, to find resources for each other. Which brings me to my next point, which is that to get involved in your community, all you need to do is open your eyes and look around you and see what needs to be done, because there is so much to do that we can't all wait for the governor or the mayor or even your council member to point to you and say, Sarah, I think your community really needs some help. Why don't you go ahead and organize a benefit for them? Or why don't you organize a voter registration drive? I'm picking on Sarah because she's actually running for state rep in my district. But that's true. You can't wait for someone to tell you what's going wrong in your community, because you know what's going on in your community. You know that, well, there's a pothole right here that needs to be fixed, or there's a dangerous intersection where children play where there really should be a street light, or this school over here never has enough resources to, say, fix the playground or to put on science programs. We need to raise money to do that. So look around and see there's lots of opportunities for leadership in the community. So go ahead and get involved in your nonprofit organizations. Go ahead and get involved in your parent-teacher organization. Get involved in your local voter organizations. Attend your city council meetings. Attend your local school board meetings. And that's when you will know, and when you start speaking up at these organizations and showing leadership, that's when people will start to notice you and say, wow, Sarah's pretty smart. Sarah brought lots of great ideas to our board. Sarah seems to think that Sarah seems to really know what's going on. Or Ann Sung is coming up. She's on the HISD school board. Ann's really smart. I think Ann has a lot of really great ideas. She has all these incredible qualifications. And maybe we should invite her to be on a committee, to be on a board. And when you get to be on those committees and boards, that's when you start building the resume where people start taking you more seriously. Maybe you'll become a board member of Apapa, just like JJ Clements. And all of that started though, and I know JJ personally because she's out of Fort Bend County like I am. JJ started her career by almost backwards. She ran for school board first, but when she ran for school board, people noticed her and said, you know what? JJ is really smart. JJ has a lot of great ideas. JJ works hard and really knows her community. And that's when JJ started getting asked to join organizations and boards and really contribute her ideas to the community. And eventually, if she decides to run for school board again, you'll have a much better shot of running and winning at elections if you are very well known in your community and lots of people support you. So that's my main message to you, is that you can get involved in elections by simply opening up your eyes and seeing what's around you and seeing what opportunities there are for leadership, and to just fill that void. because it's really easy to do, and you don't have to wait for somebody to ask you. And just as an aside, I'm on the Governor's Commission for Women, and one of my roles on the Governor's Commission for Women my passion is to encourage other women, especially young women, but it doesn't matter, even older women as well, that they need to get involved in politics. Because a lot of women just expect their husbands, or their brothers, or their fathers to take care of issues for them. But as we know today, it's very important for women's voices to be heard as well as men's voices, because women have their own issues and experiences that are different from men's. And that voice is incredibly valuable. So I want to encourage all women here, and I want all the women here and men here to encourage the women in your lives to get involved in politics, because we can't expect other people to speak on our behalf if we're too afraid, or we're too timid, or we just don't speak up for ourselves. We have to speak up for ourselves. I went through this very fast. Are there any questions here?
Actually, you're running for the
County Court Outlaw number 3 in...
When will be the election?
That's an excellent question. County Court Outlaw, my primary election is going to be on March 6th. And I wasn't here earlier. Did somebody explain the primary system and the general election? So, just as a little crash course, there's lots of different levels of elections, and we vote on everything in Texas, and there's basically an election every 6 months. So coming up on March 6th is going to be the primary election. Sarah's running as a Democrat for District 26, and I'm running as a Republican for County Court Outlaw number 3. What happens during the primaries is that each office that's up for election first gets voted on by Republicans, Democrats, and all the other political parties. And then they come up with their nominee. And then in November, we have a general election where the Republican, Democrat, and other political parties all run against each other. And the winner from that becomes the elected official that next January. And I saw a hand that was back there. Did you have a question, sir?
Yes. Do you have a WeChat account?
I do have a WeChat account. It's Jennifer Chang, I believe. I used to live in Shanghai, and I kept my WeChat account.
Yes, that will help you a lot.
We are firm believers in social media here on the Jennifer Chang for Judge campaign.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And whether the Sugar Land residents or whole Bend County residents can vote?
Right, so you have to live within a particular geographic area. My geographic area is Fort Bend County. So if you live in Fort Bend County, if you live in Missouri City, Sugar Land, Stafford, Meadows Place, Rosenberg, Richmond, certain parts of Katy, not every part of Katy, Fulshire and Simonton, that's generally my area. There's about 700,000 residents in Fort Bend County. It's a very big election. Sarah's election is going to be a little bit different because it runs through different counties, and as well as Ann's election is a little bit different because it's just for you're part of HISD, not even all of HISD. So you really have to look at your voter registration card, or you can go onto the Secretary of State's website or your elections administrator's office and see what particular areas you live in and who your representative are that you can vote for. Oh, I do have a Facebook account, Jennifer Chang for Judge, and my website is www.jenniferchangforjudge.com. We have a meet and greet in Rosenberg, Texas at the Old Railroad Cafe on December 6th. If any of you are out in Fort Bend County or if you want to invite your friends, you're more than welcome to come. We are also planning on several Asian outreach events coming up in the new year. So if you join our mailing list at jenniferchangforjudge.com, we can push out an invitation to you when we get those events scheduled.
Tell them if you're elected, you'll be the first Asian.
That's my mother. By the way, this is my mother and my son. And one of the reasons why I want to encourage women to get involved in politics is because they always say, well, I have to worry about my husband or my children, or, well, I brought my child with me. So there really is no excuse for running, saying that politics takes too much time. That's right.
And you have to train them young. When I was an active person, I did, was the beginning of 80-20 and OCA. I was with y'all. Now I'm much older. I have to give up for grandma. But one thing is really neat is Jennifer and I'm probably the first mother and daughter team to serve for the governor of women.
Governor's Commission for Women. So, and Mom could actually give this speech herself because she is a contemporary of Martha Wong and Gordon Kwan and Dr. Lee Pai. And what is very interesting is that we always said that Mom and Martha were basically the token Republicans amongst a lot of the Democrats that were in the Asian community.
But it doesn't matter, as long as you want to do your passion, whatever your passion is. Mine was always education. I'm a retired school teacher. So right now I'm serving 18-year on Fort Bend Education Foundation. And I'd like for you to know the community of the Double 10 has given $10,000 for the Harvey Relief Fund. So we'll be monitoring it and going toward that. So people are getting more and more involved, and I commend that. And since this is a big conference, I wanted to make note that you know that. And also, I'm probably the first Asian plus woman that serve on a medical hospital board. Have you ever heard of Methodist? Raise your hand. Yes. Okay, I'm in all of Houston. I'm 17 years, almost 18 years at Methodist Sugarland, and we were a little baby, and we're real big now.
Mom, I got the red light, so we need to.
And then this is Jennifer's card.
I appreciate your attention. I appreciate you listening to both my mom, my son, and I wish you the very best in this conference today. Thank you so much.
Where would we be without our moms, right? Jennifer Chang for Judge. And now I would like to invite Ms. Sarah DeMerchant, who is running for Texas State Representative, to come share her thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Normally when I speak without having a script with me. But this audience is so important, and I've had to do it a few times, but I wanted to have one now for time and to make sure I cover some very important points. Again, my name is Sarah D. Merchant, and I'm running for State Representative of District 26. District 26 represents 95% of Sugarland, from Dulles and Highway 6, all the way up to by Clements, all the way to Plantation Bend, Oyster Creek, New Territory, Sweetwater, Sugar Creek, all the way out Highway 6 South, up to the border of Alief, ISD, and then a small slither of Richmond by the old courthouse, up to the George Ranch Library, up to the Dale Webb Community Center. I even have parts of Greatwood as well. Congratulations, Apapa, on your grand opening. I am sincerely honored to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation, and I look forward to coming back. This morning, I will speak about how to get involved and how to run for, and then how to support state representatives. First, let's start with why you should get involved. Get involved because your country needs you. Democracy is at risk. The vision our forefathers had for this country is no longer recognizable today. The country was built on the backs of slaves. The offsprings of these slaves sacrificed their lives so we could enjoy the education and freedoms that we enjoy today. No party can take credit for our success. We are successful because we seized opportunity and paid our dues by the sweat of our brow. Why get involved? The Asian community has always been involved in pushing our country to grow and be better. And this is a small point that I want to add in. Did you know the Brown versus Board of Education court case that was taken to the Supreme Court by the Honorable Thurgood Marshall was based and won, basically based on a court case that was presented in the late 1800s by an Asian man looking for access to equal education. So from the very beginning, the Asian community has played a role in civil rights that has enabled all minorities to have access to equal education. Why get involved? Get involved to make a difference for our children. Our children need us. Stand up and make a difference in people's lives. It is of the utmost of importance for people to get involved in the political process now. This is how I got started. Having a wage gap in my own IT security career led me to become an advocate for equal pay for equal work. So what you have to do is find an issue that you're passionate about and then scout organizations that are aligned with your priorities. Because if it's something you're passionate about, even when you're tired, you can keep going. And it's that one spark that's gonna get you going. And then once you master those areas, those subjects that mean the most to you, then you're gonna start looking for what I call your blind spots. Everyone has a blind spot. And as you find a blind spot, then you realize a certain issue may not be applicable to you in your community, but you may have friends in another community, or you may not, but you do recognize what's happening to that community is wrong, and you wanna stand up to defend their rights and make sure they have opportunities. Get out of your comfort zone. Visit a group where you're the only person that looks like you in the room. I can't take credit for that idea. I got that idea from a guy named Steven who's in OCA. And I loved it. And I've been practicing it for a number of years. I just had not put it to words. But I tell you, it definitely enlightens you, makes you want to get engaged even more. Do not join organizations that are divisive. Join organizations that are issues-based. Align with organizations that are not big on marketing fluff, but provide detailed information to empower you to make informed decisions. You want to join organizations and know their sincere stance, and they empower you to have constructive conversations that help you grow as a person and that support equality for all and enable the American dream to thrive for all. Here's another did you know. Does the year 2040 sound significant to anyone? The year 2040 is when the minority will become the majority in the United States. It will be led by the Latino community being the majority, but just when they get comfortable, the Asian community is right on its back door. It's extremely important to get engaged now so you can plant seeds and lay paths for the children, for our children that are gonna come up and need to be in elected positions. There are 3 qualifications to run for state representative. 1, to be a US citizen. 2, to be at least 21 years of age. And 3, to be a Texas resident for the last 2 years. Now, as a person who's running for office, you hear a lot of people saying, this person isn't qualified, that person isn't qualified. Those are the 3 qualifications. You may wonder, why is that? Because this government is for the people. It's not just for the educated people. It's not just for the wealthy people. It's not just for people who never had to go on welfare. It is designed to work for all the people. And these are the qualifications because it enables, it's designed to have diversity for all levels, not just cultural, not just religion, not just education, not just financial status. So when someone tells you someone isn't qualified enough, then you need to wonder, why have an elite mentality about it? What do you mean someone isn't qualified enough? Just being an American citizen and having your experiences, trying to work toward the American dream, which we all want the same things: safety, good public schools, affordable college, a strong family, the freedom to practice our religions without fear of persecution. When deciding to run, don't let anyone tell you you can't win, because everybody's different, right? They don't know how hard you're going to work. They don't know how smart, strategic you are, and you're going to have a lot of people tell you you can't win. What does that have to do with what you're going to do? Nothing. A lot of people will tell you don't run because they are trying to discourage you from running. But you have a voice. Use it. The more someone tells you and people you can't win, the more you need to really, really recognize that you can. I'll give you an example. I played Division I college basketball as a point guard. I was a captain of my high school basketball team. We were ranked in the city in the top 10. I think it's been a while ago. Should have been the top 10, no lower than 15. In one game, we were playing against a team that walked in and they were so much larger than us. I mean, the tallest girl on our team would have been the shortest girl on their team. And we were intimidated, but we were ranked higher than them, so we kept thinking, is this a mistake? They're gonna beat us. Not only are they taller than us, but they had more muscle than us. And within the first 5 minutes of that game, we were running them into the ground. And we beat them. I mean, we blew them out. And what that taught me is sometimes it will appear as though everything is against you. That doesn't mean it can beat you. Because your success is going to be determined on how smart you plan, how well you train, how conditioned you are, and how well you execute your playbook. Who in here knows their state representative? Raise your hand. Okay. Most people don't. That's where research comes in to determine who to support. You have to research who represents you. Then determine what type of person you want representing you. And I gotta tell you, I've worked in IT security for a long time. Running for office, I never really saw myself heading down this path, but I do know what woke me up. I didn't like who was representing me. I didn't like what they stood for. I grew up in Fort Bend County, the most diverse county in the country, and one of the most educated. What does that tell me? It tells me we are the leaders of this country. The next Congress representatives, the next senators that are gonna come, that are gonna rise in the United States, they will be Latino, they will be Asian, they will be African American. Now, determine, really, really have a trust but verify mentality. Do you want a representative that's a liar? Are they saying one thing to your face and then when you research them, are they voting another way? Are they a racist? And I mean on public record, not hearsay. Do you want us to support someone like that? No. Do you want to support someone who says one thing and does another? No. One of my favorite quotes deals with responsibility. It is by German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller. It is about German intellectuals following the Nazis' rise to power and subsequent purging of their chosen targets, group after group. It goes, First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Here is my take on the quote for our time. First, they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not Jewish. Then they came for the African Americans, and I did not speak out because I am not African American. Then they came for the Latinos, and I did not speak out because I was not Latino. Then they came for the Muslims, and I did not speak out because I was not Muslim. Then they came for you. Who will be left to speak for you? Just like engaging with organizations that align with your priorities, you need to align with candidates whose words and actions align with yours. I've met many people on the campaign trail who tell me, I've talked with this person and this is what they said. And I'm like, well, did you look up their record? Because that's not what they did. Over and over again. And then they keep saying one thing and doing another. There are candidates that will say, I believe women should have equal pay for equal work. But when you check their voting record, they voted against all proposed legislation for women to have equal pay for equal work every opportunity they had. Do you want to vote for someone like that? No. Our public schools, K through 12 and higher education, are under attack. Candidates will tell you, I believe in strong public schools. And I'm talking about state representative candidates. They will say, I believe in strong public schools. Yet every legislative session since they've been in office, they have voted to remove billions, with a B, billions, from public education funding and are aggressively working to continue for higher education to be less and less attainable, including now. Start here. We need Apapa to help save public schools, among many other things. Let's start with saving education and planting a seed in the future of the next generation. Candidates will tell you, I believe in local control for cities. But when you check their record, they consistently vote against local control. Pick leaders that supports our values with their actions. People are counting on telling you one thing and that you're going to believe it because they looked you in the eye and shook your hand. That day is done. That's not good enough. Have a trust but verify mentality. You're going to walk away and feel real good. This person told me this. This is what they said. I believe them. Go find where they said it publicly. Go look on the record where they've stated their stance. Don't let someone tell you, I support working families, but everything that they support, that they vote for, hurts working families. Some leaders will look you in the eye and tell you they support you. They'll tell you what you want to hear. Then when they get back to their office, they will make statements that are disrespectful towards you, then propose and vote for legislation that discriminates against you. The Asian community is the most educated demographic in several communities in this area. If you do not hold elected officials accountable, who will and when? The buck does stop with you. You need to make sure there is no one elected to office that is going to infringe upon your rights or any other community's rights. As I mentioned earlier, have a trust but verify mentality is extremely important. Whatever an elected official is telling you they believe or what they have done, verify it yourself. Don't ask someone. You have the tools at your fingertips on your phones. Those are nothing but little computers to find the truth yourself. We are the United States of America. Support leaders at all levels, local, state, federal, that respect the united in the United States of America. You must support candidates that are honest with you and in their actions they believe in justice for all and show it. Pay attention to determine if someone is stroking your ego or using general marketing terms that do not paint an adequate picture. For example, a couple of years ago, there was legislation proposed called Fresh Choice for education vouchers. It was not a fresh choice. That voucher was basically going to destroy public schools as we know it. It was going to kill it. So there was no fresh choice. It was a disastrous choice, if you ask me. But if you just go by the name, you think this is something good. And it was not good. Our country is young and powerful. We achieved this amazing feat by building strong public schools for the masses and having college be affordable. Without it, we will lose our innovative edge. The rest of the world has followed the United States platform of having strong public schools. And now that the other countries are now following our blueprint, we decide, you know what, that didn't work. We want to give the money to private schools. And I don't know about you, but I don't think the education of my 7-year-old daughter should be in the hands of a for-profit institution. How is that working out for healthcare? Right? Support candidates that are humble and honest enough to mingle with you and truly represent you. I will close with what you can do to support candidates running for state representative. Host a meet and greet to introduce them to your family and friends. Phone bank, if only for a couple of hours. You'd be amazed how if 40% of the Asian community donated 2 hours a year, 2 in total for each individual for a campaign, the impact you will have. Block walk. Reach out to the campaign and ask how you can help and offer creative ways in which you can help. Now, a candidate does not need to have as much money as the opposition to win. You can win with less money. So don't let anyone intimidate you. And people will try and say, this person has a war chest. Well, what's a war chest? I don't think $100,000 is a war chest, right? They'll tell you they have a war chest. It has nothing to do with how much they have. It has to do with how smart they spend it. And frankly, it has to do with their actions as well. It also has to do with you and how smart you are with your spending. How many volunteers you can have. Because I gotta tell you, I'd rather have a body any day over $1 because I can reach way more people with 10 volunteers than I can with $10. A candidate just needs enough money to run their campaign. That said, they're expensive, but every bit helps. Look at former President Barack Obama and how much he was able to raise with small donations of $5, $10, $15. The same with Bernie Sanders. Just set it up as a recurring donation. You'd be amazed if you can get 100 people to donate $5 a month to a campaign. It can make a huge difference. So again, and I close, my name is Sarah D. Merchant. I'm running for State Representative of District 26 in Sugar Land. If you'd like to learn more about me and my platform, my website is www.democratdemerchant.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah DeMerchant, and we wish you all success in your campaign. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Ann Sung, who is the HISD trustee for District 7.
Thank you so much. So I've been asked to talk about how to get involved in campaigns and how to even run for a campaign. So I'll start by telling you a little bit about my own journey, how I got involved, how I ended up running, and I was recently re-elected to serve as the HISD trustee for District 7. And then I'd like to share with you why it's so important to be involved and how you too can be involved. So I am the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong. I grew up here in Houston, got an amazing education. My dad wanted me to be a doctor. I studied physics at Harvard and then became a school teacher because I listened to the other thing my father said, which was, those who have great opportunity need to give back to society. And that was my way. I became a high school physics teacher. I never thought I would run for office. I thought I would be a classroom teacher, serving my students, helping them get a good education, and also go to great universities and have good careers. But then I started to see where elected leadership was important. I saw how decisions that were being made that affected my school, Lee High School, where I was very proud to teach. Students from over 40 countries went to that school, from all over the world, including from China, from India, from Bhutan, Nepal, all over Asia. I saw how decisions were being made at the board level, at the superintendent level, that were making it harder for me to give my students a good education, so they would truly be prepared for college and career. And so I said, well, I gotta learn about how these decisions are made. And I started getting together with my friends, going to board meetings, speaking at board meetings, bringing my students to meet with my elected trustee. And when we realized that there were some corrupt elements at play in this district, and there were people who were more interested in contracts for their friends than in doing the right thing for kids, then we said, okay, we've got to support better candidates. So I started volunteering on campaigns, block walking, knocking on doors, talking to people, saying, I'm a teacher, do you know what's happening in our schools? This is why these elections are so important. And eventually, after a campaign cycle, we said, you know what? The people we're supporting are not winning. We need to run some people. So my friends and I sat around the table, we looked, and someone said, well, you went to HISD schools, you studied physics at Harvard and public policy at Harvard, you need to run. So I was convinced by my friends to run. And the first time I did, people did not believe that I could win. They said, well, we've never heard of you. People in the Asian community even said to me, I've never heard of you. How can you run? But we ran a strong grassroots campaign. We knocked on doors, we talked to people, we raised money from our friends who cared about education, and we came very close. We won 47% of the vote against a longtime incumbent who people said there was no way could win. And then a year ago, when he resigned and there was a special election, I had just gotten back to work. I had my own baby who was 6 months old, and I started getting phone calls saying, you know what, the trustee in your District 7 has resigned. You need to run. And I said, I don't know if I can do that. I'm just trying to figure out how to work and have a job and have a baby. The people said, we need you, we need your voice, and we're ready to work for you. So my friends, who I've been working with for years on education advocacy, stepped up for me for my campaign a year ago, and we won by 37 votes in a runoff last year. So, the total number of votes in that election was only 6,000 and change. So District 7 has close to 90,000 registered voters, but the numbers who came out for a school board election, and the HISD school board has a $2 billion budget. It educates over 200,000 students, the 7th largest school district in the country. This is the future of our children, it's the future of our education, and really it's the future of the Houston economy, because if we don't have an educated workforce, Houston's not going to continue to lead. So these elections are very, very important. So why be involved? Why vote in every single election? Because if you don't vote, people aren't going to listen to you. When it comes time for decisions to be made, for schools to be opened or schools to be closed or resources to be allocated, if you weren't at the table when elections were happening, then people are not going to listen to you. That's what I learned when I was a teacher and when I got involved and why now I ran and have a seat at the table. I was elected again this fall, this time with over 60% of the vote. And so what I want to say, something I learned when I became involved in this is Asian Americans vote at lower rates than any other group in this country. So people always are talking about, oh, Latinos are a majority in Houston, if only they would vote. Well, a group that is more educated, but that votes at a lower rate is us. And so I'm just so grateful for the for this chapter to be brought here. Thank you, Nancy, for your invitation. Thank you, Cece, for your leadership in bringing this to Houston. Because this kind of engagement is extremely important. So how to get involved? Get involved with organizations like this, civic organizations like OCA, but also get involved in elections. So when organizations like 80/20 are at the table endorsing candidates, that means that there's a relationship built. But we need to participate not just in Asian American organizations, we need to be showing up in other organizations as well, issue advocacy. Whatever organizations are out there, parties. My election is a nonpartisan election, but it is very important. People do know, are you a Democrat, are you a Republican? And we need Asian Americans to be showing up for whichever party that you belong to. And then finally, think about running. And I want to say, I'd especially like to encourage the women in the room to think about running. I had to be asked a few times before I even thought it was a remote possibility. And the statistics show that that's true of women in general. Women in leadership do very well, but they need to be asked. Okay, so I'm asking. The ladies in the room, consider this. You have been asked at least once. Get out there, get involved, take advantage of opportunities like this training opportunity, and then think about when it is the right time for you to step up and be a voice for your community. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ann, and congratulations again. We're so proud of Ann. So far we have such a wonderful program in this forum, right? Leaders from each group, from the government, from the legislative office. And guess what? Now we'll take a very short break. There are lunch boxes on the back table, and inside the room there are some more goodies. So let's take a quick break, and our next speaker will waste no time in preparing during this time for his PowerPoint presentation. So we will come back 12:30 sharp to start. So now please, enjoy your lunch.
Debbie, of course, is here as well with us. And both of us will be discussing community engagement and collaboration. Il pluribus unum. Out of many, one. Il pluribus unum, out of many, one. It's so hard sometimes for us to be considered as one because we have our own individualities and differences. And how do we reconcile those differences to call ourselves one? We came from different backgrounds. So to change the pace of this event, I want to show you a video and ask ourselves, what if? What if? It's a really good question that all of us, most Asian Americans, sometimes have to ask ourselves. We are here celebrating right now for the launching of Apapa Houston chapter. So what if the community come together as one? It could create an impact, a huge impact to the community. And that's why I and Debbie will be discussing about community engagement and collaboration today. So instead of doing a long speech with you guys, I'm just going to do a presentation. Would you like that?
Yeah.
Right. You made that better, right? What is community engagement? I think we really need to understand why we are here right now as one. It is a process where the community members come together to take collaborative and collective efforts in action to generate a common solution, to create a solution to a common problem. It is, by this broad term, given to civic leaders like I myself, JD, AJ, there's so many of us, different from different nonprofit organizations, Nancy. I mean, there's several of us, civic leaders. They're trying to make a change in this community. Involve citizens and professionals to improve our various aspects within our community. But how do we achieve this? There's several values and principles. And one of them has got to be what? It has to be democratic. The will of the majority must be carried out to make sure that all of us speak and actually be heard. Inclusive. Community members have the right to be heard and participate in the process that affects their lives. It's participation. Election is participation. Voting is participation. Coming here is participation. Non-authoritarian. Organizational structure should be as flat as possible, with all members being seen as equally as important as everyone else. Community self-determination. Community members come together to discuss their own concerns, issues, assess their options, and arrive at their own conclusion. And on top of that, we have to take ownership. Communities thrive when they develop their own assets, but also owning our own problems, arrive at our own solution. Harvey is a huge problem for Houston, and it happened. But all the community came together and found a solution. But look at it now. I know it's not over, but we went through the process because we own the problem. And as a community, we came together to solve and find a solution for the problem. To have a great collaboration, it actually process for us to be better together. And for us, I'd like to discuss the principle of this engagement. And the first one, why are we engaging in the first place? Why do you think CC actually started Apapa? Or why do you think our Houston Chair chapter now decided to take this initiative? It's not easy to take the lead of an organization, especially as Asian community. It's hard to come together and put the people together. But why are we engaging? Because we have to, people need to understand why they're engaging in the community and need this to be communicated clearly so everyone knows where they are, why we are here, but be flexible in our own approach. The reasons are there. It's so loud and clear why Apapa has put together advancement, leadership, empowerment of Asian Pacific American Islanders. Empowering and engaging Asian American Pacific Americans. That's the purpose. That's why we're here. Who to engage? We need to recognize the interested parties and encourage their engagement, commitment, and participation. We, as the Asian American, we are the interested parties. This is for our good, and for our common cause, and for our common goal. Know the history and the background. Do your homework and understand that the current framework was done, what was done prior, so we don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. We begin early. People need to be engaged from the start, so the community know what they think from the start, and they can all move forward together on the same page and the same goal.
And 5, be genuine. Being who you are. We're Asian American. We're not white people. We're not black people. We're Asian American. I'm Filipino, Chinese, Vietnamese. We are one. Be genuine of who you are. Because that's the only way that we're going to be able to relay our message. If we know our culture, our values, where we come from. Be genuine. 6, be creative and be relevant. Because it's important, young generations, for us to be open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, and new ways of communicating and process. Twitter, Facebook, all the new ways of communicating. The old folks, and I'm saying the old folks in the sense of, because some of them don't know anything about the way the technology works. And a lot of times, if you want to engage the youth, we have to make sure that we are changing and we're adapting to our environment, because if we don't, we're going to be left behind. So we have to be catered to the advancement and the progress and the development of what's happening in our country, in our community as well. What are the core values? I want you to remember all the time in any organization what CARD means. This is actually what good collaboration is. C for commitment. We have to be committed 100% that this is what we're trying to do. Apapa is here now, and hopefully it will celebrate more of the usual chapter 25 years after we're all old. So the new generation will come in and take place. Accountability, it's ownership. We have to be accountable. We can't just be complaining all the time and not do anything about it. We have to participate and engage. I mean, Steve Lee, our councilman, said today, in everything in our daily lives affects and impacts all of us. From the moment we get out in our house to go to work, for car driving, the traffic lights, the cleaning of the entire city, it impacts and affects us because of politics. Our respect. We are all our own individuals, but we have to respect each other for our differences. And the diversity. Houston is the best place because it's one of the most diverse. Look at our room right now. I see so many people from the Asian countries, from different groups in all walks of life. So please remember CARD. C-A-R-D. It's a crucial element of what good collaboration is about. Accomplishing that, we'll be able to know our limitations. We have to leave our ego behind. I mean, so much ego sometimes actually hinders the progress. Keep an open mind. Be physically and mentally present. Be sure everyone has an equal voice. Invest trust to gain trust. Invest trust to gain trust. Step out of your comfort zone. And last, acknowledge everyone's contribution. We can't all be the star of the show. Sometimes we gotta be the background and the starring role. Or sometimes we gotta be at the back and pushing and cleaning the stuff that the stars actually just presented and did their presentation. We have to be flexible in all aspects and all angles if we want to make a change. If we want to be heard. We can't be all stars. Because for that, we will reap the benefits. Engage and empower increased members and support. We will increase collectively the capacity to resolve any issues. We have to be able to build a stronger relationship. Maximize the resources and not duplicate the efforts. And lastly, we will have a healthy community. Isn't that what we like? Healthy community. That all of us come together and participate and engage. The key to a healthy community. What you contribute to the community is priceless. It doesn't matter how big or small because the impact of that contribution would last a lifetime. So if someone asks you, what makes your community healthy? How do you respond? The question and the answer really is you. It's us, it's we. We are responsible. We are the integral part to make our community healthy. Food for thought. Your action forms a habit. Your habit creates a character. Your character forms attitude. And attitude is everything. So it doesn't matter if it's small community or large city, both suffer similar fate. If the community and the people running it, even the organization, is not prepared for the roller coasters and obstacles it brings. But never give up, never give up, never give up. Because failure is part of our success. And we play the most important role of it all.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the interest of time, I'll be brief. I really have just 3 main points to make with everyone. So if you'll indulge me a moment, just a brief history, a short history of our most recent, I believe to be very significant events in the Asian American community. It's certainly something that has impacted my rationale and I guess part of the reason why I am involved in the Asian American community specifically. So in the 1980s, right, what we call the Asian American community now didn't really exist in that consciousness. It was, I'm Chinese American, I'm Vietnamese American, I'm Indian American, I'm whatever, based on our ethnicity. I'm Korean American. Then Vincent Chin was murdered, was wrongfully murdered. He was chased down a street in Detroit and beaten to death with a baseball bat. And the people who murdered him served not 1 day in jail. They served 0 time in jail. That was the pivotal moment in the Asian American community where it wasn't just, oh, that happened to a Chinese American, right? He was murdered in the streets of Detroit because unemployed auto workers believed he was Japanese. And at that time, the American economy was very challenged, and a lot of people had negative feelings about Asians overall, that the Japanese are taking over our economy, where our car industry is just going downhill, right? So that was a galvanizing moment that got Asian Americans of a variety of ethnicities to come together to try and fight for justice, because they recognized that it doesn't matter what I am. It matters what they think we are, right? And this misperception of us being perpetual foreigners in a country where we've been born in, we've been here since the 1800s, we've contributed just as much to America as any other immigrant community. So that was a galvanizing moment. Many of those of us who worked in the Asian American community felt that we've made a lot of advances since then. Then in 1999, Dr. Wen-Ho Lee, a scientist, was wrongfully accused and indicted, right, and put in jail without evidence, and accused of being a spy for China. This is someone who has been in America for decades, dedicated his life to research that was going to benefit American industry. And he was wrongfully accused. He was actually later, exonerated and received an apology. But that was after the community came together and fought for him, right? But the reason I bring up, Dr. Wen-Ho Lee is that after his protracted trial and the tribulations of his family, the Committee of 100 came to Houston and actually held a conference. And the chair of the Committee of 100 made a point that's really stuck in my mind all these years, right? It's 2017 now. And he said that Dr. Wen-Ho Lee's defense cost over $1 million. The majority of that was actually paid for on a pro bono basis by a non-Asian American law firm in California, okay? The total sum of money that was raised to support that defense by the Asian American community was not anywhere near $1 million, right? And yet that could have happened to anyone. And recently, that's happened again. Entire lives, entire careers are destroyed based on false accusations of us, this misperception of us being the perpetual foreigner, even though we have been here for decades. So the chairman of the Committee 100, he made a very valid point. And he said, he compared the Asian American community to the Jewish community, okay? And he said the Jewish American community in America comprises less than 1%. Why do they have so much influence, right? And he said it was for two reasons. One, they give money. Their community consistently invests money in political candidates and in their own community organizations. Okay. The second is that, well, it's really three, right? The second one is tied together. The second is they actively try to develop and promote Jewish Americans to go into office, to be politically engaged. And then the next part of that is Jewish Americans can also be counted on to vote as a bloc, right? So it's that combination of money and voting that was his point. And so at that time, the chairman of Committee 100 made a plea to the Asian American community here in Houston. I believe that they were actually going around the country at that time to community forums, to various community leaders, and basically asked for our community to try and commit, right? If every individual, every business person in the Asian American community were to commit just 1% of their net income to commit that money to supporting Asian American community organizations that do community work and Asian American candidates that are going to run for office, that was what we needed to model ourselves after the success of the Jewish American community to be truly successful and have influence. I don't know how many people really took that to heart, right? And this is back in 99, well, technically in the early 2000s by the time the case was solved. We're now in 2017, and I'll go back to 2010. 2010 was a key census year. The Census Bureau had allocated community outreach funds to do community outreach to various communities. And every community had funding allocated to them except the Asian American community. So all the recent statistics that we've been hearing over the past few years of how Asian Americans are one of the fastest growing communities. Asian Americans contribute to the economy at a much higher rate than all other communities. We start small businesses, we employ people, we start small businesses at a faster rate. We contribute billions into the American economy. And yet our community was not considered for any funding for census. Why is that significant? Because the census is the basis for all funding that has anything to do with the government in America. The census numbers determine which communities get the money to pave their roads, which communities get money to fund their schools. So if our community doesn't get counted, for every community really, any community that's counting less one person, that means they get a less share of that money that we contribute to as taxpayers, especially the Asian American business community. We employ millions of people. We generate funds and we pay our taxes, right? So there was a national foundation found out about this and put in $10 million to fund census community outreach in 2010 for the Asian American community. But frankly, that was a fluke of luck It wasn't because our community was organized. It wasn't because our community, was systematically reaching out to different foundations for that work specifically. It happened to be two individuals who met at a community event and explained the situation, right? And it happened to be that foundation's president was Chinese American. And so she was not happy to understand what happened. Why were we not considered? So after the outreach was done for the census in 2010, this foundation asked this question, the same question that the Committee of 100 had asked back after Wen-Ho Lee, right? Almost 20 years ago. And it was, why were we not included? Right? Why was the interest of the Asian American community not taken into consideration? And her conclusion was almost the same as the Committee of 100. And it basically was, the Asian American community is not engaged. We're not civically engaged. We don't go out and vote as a bloc in significant enough numbers. We don't have a developed pipeline of leaders of the Asian American community. And third, our people do not give money on a consistent basis. Because we can train as many people as we want to run for office, but the reality is it takes money to run for office, right? And our community doesn't give enough to support our own future pipeline of leaders. Our own community doesn't give enough to support the community organizations that are out there trying to get our people to go and vote as a bloc. We need that partnership hand in hand. And so I'm very grateful to Apapa for inviting me to come and speak today, to be able to share some of these observations over the past 20, 30 years. The census is coming up again in 2020. We have key elections coming up in 2020, 2019, and 2018, especially for Houston. The mayor and city council elections are in 2019. There are significant opportunities for our community. The census of 2020, the numbers that get counted will determine the redistricting maps of 2021, right? And so those redistricting maps will determine, are there seats available, right, at all levels of government? Will there be seats available where Asian Americans live and could have an opportunity to put forward a candidate, a qualified candidate, who actually understands the issues and needs of the Asian community as well as the broader community to go and represent the interests of all people, right? But to make sure that our interests are actually there and taken into consideration. And so I look forward to working with Apapa. As a result of the 2010 census, that foundation who funded that work has now tried to focus on getting Asian Americans to be more involved and getting Asian Americans to donate money. So I'll borrow a moment of time where this foundation has made a pitch, essentially an opportunity to 25 organizations around the country where they are giving a $1 million matching grant opportunity. So for Houston, OCA was one of those recipients, where for every dollar we raise to do civic engagement work, to develop future leaders and to get our people to go and vote and to be educated about issues, they will give us $2, of which we are reinvesting back into the community to support our community partners and to be able to actually get people to register and go vote and to train future leaders. So I just leave you with those three thoughts is, if you as a leader in a community organization, or even as just a community member, right? This work cannot be accomplished with the efforts of just the handful of community organizations that do this work. This needs to be a cultural paradigm shift, right? So if you remember anything, remember that cultural paradigm shift means every Asian American, every Asian American organization, right? Even if your mission is not civic engagement, let's say you are a social club for seniors, or you have an annual gala dinner or a Lunar New Year festival or whatever it is, right? You can still be a part of this cultural paradigm shift by having someone at your check-in registration desk to ask the question of, hi, do you welcome coming to our event? Are you a citizen? Do you need help getting citizenship? Here are some organizations we can refer you to. Are you registered to vote? Oh, if you are registered to vote, can we contact you to send you a text or a reminder to tell you where to go vote? And have a sign-up sheet, a pledge card sheet, right then and there. Until every Asian American in this community, regardless of what business they go to, whether it's the grocery stores and they have voter registration cards at the checkout counter of the grocery stores, right? Or if they go to a community event, we need to have that cultural paradigm shift where it's normal. It's normal for us as a community to be involved in the community, to give money to support candidates, even if it's $10, $100, every dime counts. And if every single one of us, everywhere we go, are reminded of the importance of going to vote. Our right to vote is intrinsically tied with the African American and the Latino community, right? Most people have heard of Brown versus Board of Education, which got rid of separate but equal. Majority of people do not realize that the legal precedent for Brown versus Board of Education was based on cases that were brought by Chinese Americans in the late 1800s. We have been an intrinsic part of building that history and building legal precedent for equality and rights for all people here. So, thank you, and I'm happy to talk with anyone.
I didn't get to introduce her before, but Debbie is the Houston OCA chair. And now I would like to introduce the co-chairman of EM Engage and DNC committee man, Mr. AJ Durrani.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for the introduction. I'd asked specifically to be introduced in my two titles because what I'm going to be talking about is my role as a DNC committeeman, which is a partisan role, but also my role as the chairman of Engage, previously called Emerge USA, which is really a civic engagement organization. Sure. Okay, next slide, please. Texas is a big state. We heard Stephen Lee talk about it, but Asian Americans are not spread all over Texas, just like in the United States, we are not all over. We are in pockets, and that really means that we need to collaborate and work with other communities. We are focused predominantly in the Houston, Fort Bend area. You can see in the lower right-hand corner, then up at the top near the Dallas area, for Austin, San Antonio, and that little red spot is Moore County in the Panhandle, where there are just about 1,000 Asians, but since the population is low, we are 6% of the population. One thing to point out from the numbers above is we do not have critical mass. What does critical mass mean? Critical mass means you have a large percentage of your community in any one given area. We are reaching that, we're getting there in Fort Bend County, where we have over 15%. Critical mass is generally described as between 15 to 20%. In Harris County, we have 250,000 voters, but that our total percentage is 6%. However, if we vote in large numbers, that percentage can be overcome, or if you collaborate with other communities, like the African American community and the Hispanic communities, then the impact of our collaborative effort can really be substantial. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to go over this with you because most of the people over here are very knowledgeable, but when we think about politics, for the most part, we think about the presidential elections. Every 4 years, that's when we get excited, that's when we get involved. Well, our federal government is made up obviously of the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. We generally think along those lines. Next slide, please. But we also have a state government, and we have elections every 2 years. There's elections coming up in 2018 in which we elect 150 state representatives. Sarah Merchant is contesting for that election. And obviously we have other positions. Next slide, please. And the next is the city government. People spoke about the election of the mayor in 2019 and city councilman, and Melvin is going to be running hopefully for city council. Next slide, please. We also have the county government. Commissioner Judge Emmett is of course the head of it, but we have a whole bunch of different positions which affect us in courts, parks, elections, and so on. Next slide, please. And finally, local districts, school board elections, mud districts. Next slide. So what this really shows is we vote for 50 plus people. We just don't vote for the president. And if we understand that we are going to be voting for a lot of people, we can be engaged and involved. And every one of those people who get elected affect our lives because they develop policy. Next slide, please. So how are policies developed? We the people develop laws and policies. It's not straightforward. The way it goes through, next slide, is that the major parties, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, identify and they get elected to federal, state, and local offices, obviously interest groups. Next slide. So the parties matter. And here I want to take a little time to talk about not just the Democratic Party, which I'm a member of, but also to be involved in your party structure. Involvement is not just voting. So many people think, hey, I've done my job, I went and voted. You need to be involved in the structure of politics also to make an impact. Next slide. So what is the party structure? There are two parts of the party structure. One is the permanent part, which they elect the party chair, the county chair, the precinct chairs, and there's a separate temporary structure called the delegates. In 2018, we are going to have the election of delegates and the committees, and we obviously are going to have the elections on the left also. Next slide. However, the lowest level of elected office in this in the country, or especially in the state, is something called precinct chair. We never get involved in it. In every given area of about 5,000 people, there's a precinct chair. One Republican, one Democrat. These individuals essentially elect their county chair, they also then elect the state chair, but unless you're involved in the precinct level, you really don't have any impact. The Emerge USA, working with the Asian community, right now, almost 20% of the Fort Bend precinct chairs are part of the Asian American community. Why? We educated our people to get involved at the lowest level. The deadline to file for precinct chair is December 11th. Less than 10 days away. If you know of anyone who's interested, tell them to file for precinct chairs because many of those positions are vacant. Next slide, please. Next, I want to talk to you about something that people mentioned, which is the primary elections. We always think of the November election, but frankly, given the districts that they have been built right now, most elections are decided in the primary elections. The primary election coming up in March 6th. People have already filed for the primary elections, the vast majority of them, and there will be elections. But why the primary elections are important is not just because of districts, but also for our community, and I'll say that in a moment. Next slide, please. In the primary elections, less than 10% people vote. So it doesn't matter whether our percentage of the total population is low, if we get out and vote, and that is how the Jewish community really became far more influential than their numbers. They voted in bloc in the primaries. They essentially elected the person in the primary who was going to then get elected in November because of the way that our districts have been set up. Most likely there are blue districts and red districts where once the primary for either one of them gets elected. And the presidential election may be 50%, but the primaries matter. So the primary is March 6th. And please get involved, make sure that you vote in the primary. Next slide, please. Now, the Texas Democratic Party, of which I am part, never used to have an Asian American in the state executive committee. We made an appeal and said, look, why is there no Asian on the state executive committee? And they said, well, nobody has actually come forth. And we don't have it in our rules. So we got ourselves elected in the rules committee, made a change to the Texas Democratic Party rules. So now there will always be 2 Asian Americans on the state executive committee. It will be whoever the Asian American Democrats of Texas elect. But in 2006 we passed this. Last year, Texas was awarded one extra seat by the Democratic National Committee because of our growing population. As usual, we sent forth and said, hey, wait a minute, there's never been a nation on the Democratic National Committee. How come you not give that seat to a nation? They said, sorry, everybody can run for it, but if a nation wins the election, that seat will become the Asian seat. Fortunately, I ran. There were 16 other contestants, the crowd of 17. I won the election. It's not important that I won the election, but the important part is my seat is now the Asian seat. My successor will continue to be an Asian. That means there will be an Asian American representing our community at the highest levels of the Democratic Party. Here in Texas, we have 2 National Committee members. The Youth Committee member, the DNC, is also Asian American, Cat Wang. We had 17 national delegates to the National Convention last year. We have 6 members of the State Executive Committee. We have 2 county chairs. We have over 100 precinct chairs. I'll tell you the more important part, we have over 50 election judges. When you go into an election booth and somebody looks at you and sees an Asian American over there, you can ask them, can I see your papers please, rather than the other way around. And when you see an Asian American running the election, being an election judge, having election workers, it shows we have a seat at the table. Next slide please. So what our local API community is doing, and I want to thank you, and I wish I started by identifying every person. I don't know the name of every person who's in the leadership of Apapa. Thank you very much for opening a chapter here. Because what you are going to be doing is you are going to be doing what other community organizations have been doing. Engaging, empowering the people. Putting together candidate forums. Putting together voters education. And it doesn't matter whether there are existing organizations, any new organization that gets involved in having Asian-focused workshops, ethnic radio, ethnic print media, collaborations. And here's an organization like Engage, which really focuses on Muslims, Arabs, South Asians, the Masa community. We all benefit because when we come and we educate each other, we participate and we get involved. Voter registrations. Voter registration is not, to use a word, it's not sexy. Nobody really thinks about voter registration. They said, yeah, I see people who have got a place at Walmart and they're doing some voter registration, what does it matter? I don't know if you know that less than 60% of Asian Americans who are eligible to vote are registered. That means our target is 40%. There is no community, not even the Hispanic community, are so underrepresented in terms of the voting public because 40% of our folks are not. I know of medical doctors who live here in the Memorial area. They have been here 25 years. They have not registered to vote because they think, oh geez, if I register to vote, I'll be called for jury duty and then I'll have to miss 1 day of practice. No, it's important that we do. And we are working with Debbie and OC and others to really get out people to register to vote. And it's not just by setting up a shop at a temple or a church or a mosque, but we have gotten a list of Asians, Mass Asians who are US citizens but not registered to vote. People who have moved or people who have graduated and have become voters but have not registered to vote. That's a project that we're going to be working on. Next slide, please. So what are some of the issues that are important to the Asian communities? There are many issues, but I think you need to identify those issues that people can listen to. If I just go to a person and say, please go out and try and work because we have carrier pigeons that could potentially be extinct. I've got nothing against carrier pigeons. They did get extinct, or the prairie pigeons. I will not get the same kind of feedback or same kind of reaction. But if I tell them, are you interested in education for your kids? I think almost all of the Asian Americans will say, yes. Why? Because that's what we have focused on. My background is not politics. If most people talk to me, they say, oh, you must be some kind of political involvement. I'm not. I'm a petroleum engineer. I came to this country to go to graduate school to get a degree in petroleum engineering. Then I worked as a petroleum engineer with one company for 34 years. And after that, when I retired or close to retirement, I said, you know what? I've done nothing but do work in petroleum engineering. I can give some to the community. I got involved in politics. But people don't have to wait that long. But I can tell people that education is important, both at the K through 12 level and of course access to higher education. Language access, we finally worked. We now have in Texas or in Harris County our ballots are in Chinese and in Vietnamese in addition to English and Hispanic. We have ballots, voter guides, and media that now are on those two languages. There is an immigration backlash. That we give the story of people identifying a person and wanting to do things because they thought he was Japanese, turned out to be a Chinese. But all immigrants are facing backlash, and it's unfortunate. Under the current climate, it appears that instead of immigrants being looked upon as being providing something to the community, we are looked upon as taking something away. No, we are not. We have been here a long time. Our kids are providing continuity. In fact, if you go to most classrooms, you'll find that the Asian kids are the ones who are doing well ahead of most of the others. And one of the things those kids have, my kids, your kids, is they don't think of themselves as being other or foreigners or immigrants. They think of themselves as high-achieving individuals. We need to encourage them and make sure. Obviously, there are religious, civil liberties, and hate crimes. I'm a Muslim, and there's right now a lot of work being comments against Muslims, and we are, and other communities within the immigrant communities facing problems. Of course, small business safety is a factor here. Next slide, please. So how do you engage people? We are not one monolithic group. You can't look around and say, well, this is a nation. You don't recognize them. We have, of course, the Southeast Asian, people from the Hmong community, Cambodian, Burmese, Laotian, Vietnamese. Of course, the South Asian, Indian, Pakistani, Bangladesh, Nepalese, Sri Lankan, the East, Japanese, Chinese, Taiwanese, Korean. I may have missed some. But we really encompass a very large monolithic group. We are also, some of us are refugees. We talk about high-achieving Asians, but there are also Asian American in the community who are not doing that well financially. We have old versus young. We have people who came as immigrants. We have people who have been born here. We have issues of language and of building trust. But the voting patterns is that we used to vote Republican. We have now changed, now voting Democrat. A younger generation thinks of themselves independent. Next, and my last slide. So what's the future focus here? And this is where Apapa can assist and Apapa can be a part of. Our registration is very low. I've already spoken to you about it. Turnout, and I use the word depressing. You know why? Because we are the most educated community. People say we can't get it into our head. It is important for us to vote, and yet we don't. We'll sit at home and find something that we need to do. Watch a movie, watch a football game, whatever, but we will not go to vote. We need to speak about API voter issues. I give you the example. Don't talk to people about things that are not important to them. Talk about education, talk about immigration, talk about business. And then we need to educate people on the down ballot issues. We just can't say, well, vote for the president. Thank you. My next slide. I'll be here if you have any questions. Thank you again for Apapa for putting together this and getting your presence here.
I would like to invite Mr. Bin Xie, President of the Chinese Houston Alliance.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Mr. CCE. Before I start, I'd like to thank Mr. David Chen. Your speech enlightened me. I agree with you 97.9% because I share same interest and the same concerns as you. And when you talk about back in like many years ago, Jewish community committed a lot of everything to their mutual interest. Our Chinese community or Asian community committed almost none. I was shocked. But I also witnessed the same thing you are talking about today, even today. Because two years ago in my local community, which is Sugarland, Houston, we had voting, the Asian communities work together and try to put someone into the city council. Well, actually, we thought almost everybody started voting. However, when the data came out after the election, I thought we got almost 90%, 97% or 80% at least. No, that's not true. No more than 15%. That makes me so upset. Why? Because I thought we mobilized every Asian voter here, but it's not true. So we have a lot of work to do, but I need to stay on the script. I was told not to go off the script. So we have a lot of work to do, and I think, personally, no matter which party we stay with, we have to vote. If we don't vote, we don't exist. And also, we have to participate in all the activities, local, start with our local school board, city council, start with very, very small things, and then we can make ourselves to exist first. Right now, in the greater Houston area, because 2 years ago, we looked at one voting data from from Houston, city Houston. How many Asians cast their vote in one local election? In fact, I counted the data, we have only 1,800 something. Wait for me. We have about 250,000 Asians living here. Why do we have only 1,800 people voting? Okay, let me get started. Good afternoon, my fellow Asian Americans. It's my pleasure to be here with you right now, right here, on this beautiful day in this gorgeous place, celebrating the grand opening of Houston, Texas APAPA. And from my heart, and on behalf of the Houston Chinese Alliance, which is HCA, we would like to congratulate to you and wish you the great success. Long before this grand opening, I was already aware that APAPA is a grassroots community-based organization focusing on increasing API civic participation at the local, state, and the national levels through voter registration and education, civic leadership programs, including internships and a scholarship for high school and college students, fellowship and mentorship for adults learning, leading to appointive, judicial, and elective offices. The members of APAPA have been working diligently and tirelessly to inspire, engage, and empower Asian and Pacific leaders through education, leadership, and active participation in civic and public affairs. Now let me talk about the Houston Chinese Alliance. Houston is the most diverse city of this nation. No doubt about that. With 500,000 AAPI population. We have 500,000 Asian AAPI living in this city. We probably don't even know about that. I looked at the data yesterday. It is true. The opening of a new chapter of APAPA will give this city's AAPI population new hope, new direction, and new energy. We wish you great success, and we will be successful together. HCA is a non-profit, non-PAC, grassroots and volunteer-based organization founded in February 2014 by a group of local civil activists and leaders. HCA is committed to protecting the rights and the interests of all people, particularly those of Chinese ethnicity, in the greater Houston area, and to promoting their well-being and development in the United States. To this end, the last 3.5 years, HCA has hosted a number of lectures and forums covering civil rights and current legal issues that impact the community, local security, as well as local and national elections. HCA has organized various activities to promote the Chinese community's participation in the important local and national affairs. As such, HCA will be able to provide assistance and support to those in need. In doing so, HCA will provide a platform for the Chinese community so that their voice will be heard. As you know, in this year's Harvey disaster, which is an 800-year event, HCA played a leading role in organizing local and national Chinese communities to provide needed help to the families impacted by this disaster. During a period of 24 days following the disaster, following the Harvey landfall, HCA raised more than $80,000 and purchased needed disaster relief equipment and materials and delivered them to the local families which are in need. HCA also purchased more than 2,000 hot meals and delivered them to the disaster impacted families. In addition, in doing so, HCA has become the community leader in the greater Houston area by serving the need of the Chinese community. APA and HCA share many common interests, values, goals, and objectives. We can work together, we can work closely together for the common good of our community, and we will work together. We will make a big difference and strive for a better tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We look forward to working with HCA. Now for our closing remarks, I would like to invite Mr. Anthony Ng up to close us out.
Hi everyone, are you still awake? Well, gratitude is at the heart of Thanksgiving. I thank you. On a beautiful Saturday morning, you sit through how many hours? A few hours. And I bet you are all information overload. So I don't need to give you more data or more statistic. But I do want to take you up a little bit. Let's have a bird's eye view. And I want to start with, I said it last night, if you're not on the table, you're on the menu. Yes, for some of us, or quite a few, on the table now, but we are still ordering or following the menu that are not written by us. So my challenge is like Chinese American in America, 4.7 million. Filipino, 4.7 million. Vietnamese, I can go on, but together the whole Asian is about 18 to 20 million, depends on if you count those Adaka. The point I want to make is just us or just one group is not enough. So I want to throw out another, that was my opening remark in June. If you want to be fast, fly alone. But if you want to go far, we need to fly together. And only together that we lift up each other, we can get there together. So this is not a one organization or just one group, even not just Asian. But then it does help when you collectively say 4 million might be a little compared to 200 or 300 million population, but 18 has a little bit then. And I'm glad someone who said that by 2040 will be double. When it is 40-some million, a concrete 10% of our population, and that is the real swing vote, I call it. But how can we do that? We could not do it alone. So I want to point it out. That's why we call CLF Foundation. We have only one mission, one goal. We sponsor Civic Leadership Forum for all the civic leaders come out, meet, and work together. In other sense, our mission is to train and connect civic leaders. For what? For creating a pipeline of public servants. I hate using politician this word because it has a different annotation. They are public servant. Why? Because in other culture, when you're in that position, it is privilege. But in America, they serve. I'll give you a few examples. I've been running around the country for the last 18 months. 12 states, 27 cities. After that, I see so many of the young civic leaders rising up. And I don't want to embarrass the one who just left, Ensun. I heard about her story, going back to the inner city to serve. In Wisconsin, I run into Judge Yang, who is a high-paid corporate lawyer, but wanted to serve her own community, so gave up that job and ran for circuit judge. It's a big pay cut. She's very young, but when I asked her why, she said to me, because I want to have direct influence in my community that I grew up from. She was a refugee when she was 6. Came over, get through all the bullying from public school system, and be a lawyer. And now she's giving back in a very concrete way. But we are not looking at those big, high examples. Just like, is Vincent still here? Vincent? In October, when I conducting the CLF in Ohio, I get so touched by a parent and a student come up to me. A young gentleman, 15 years old, after he heard about, you only need to be 16 and a US citizen, you can run for school board commissioner. You already can influence the policy that can affect so many people. You know what he said? He come up to me, Anthony, thank you for this education session. I'm 15 now, I have 1 year to prep myself, and I'm going to run when I reach 16. And that's all it's worth for what we do here. And I thank you for all these leaders on the side, in different cities, in their own role, doing whatever they could, big and small. So I ended by saying, this is what we believe and what we do, diverse in leadership, inclusive in participation. Participation means every one of you. And I hope that in your own role, in your own place, we can all involve. So do this together. So I end with one more time. Let's fly together. Thank you.
Alrighty, this concludes our Civic Leadership Forum of 2017. We shall do more similar events in the future, and all of you will be invited. Thank you very much for joining us today.